We are arriving.
Wow, welcome everyone. Hello. Hi everyone. I'll just wait a couple of seconds to let people join in and share my screen. Hello everyone. I welcome to this webinar, this launch of the e-course Who Cares? An anti-racist, anti-oppressive guide to supporting youth mental health. My name is Catherine Ploufjeté. I'm with the Canadian Women's Foundation, and I'm going to get us started by before introducing our speakers today. First things first, the work of the Canadian Women's Foundation and that of the programs we support take place on traditional First Nations, Métis, and Inuit territories. We are grateful for the opportunity to meet and work on this land. However, we recognize that land acknowledgement are not enough. We need to pursue truth, reconciliation, decolonization, and allyship in an ongoing effort to make right with all of our relations. Personally, I have the privilege of living at the crossroads of many traditional unceded territory, the traditional unceded territories of many nations, including the Huron-Wendat, the Wabanaki, the Innu, the Atikamekw, and the Wolastoqey, a territory that is also known as Quebec City. So, of course, I invite you to look at the website Native Lands that was shared in the chat if you want to know if you want to know which traditional territory you are on today. Feel free to share that info and also the name of your organization in the chat if you want. If you don't know about us, the Canadian Women's Foundation is a national leader in the movement for gender equality in Canada. Since 1991, we have worked to achieve systemic change through funding, research, advocacy, and knowledge sharing. We support women, girls, and gender diverse people to move out of violence, out of poverty, and into confidence and leadership. Sharing some technical details today. So, this event is being recorded, and the recording will be available soon on our YouTube page and our website. During the webinar, you are invited to use the chat to share your comments. Please note that we are moderating the chat, so please use this tool respectfully. We won't tolerate any disrespect or violence. If you have questions for the panelists, please type them into the Q&A box during the event. We will monitor this box and pause your question at the end of the session, doing our best to get as many as possible. And if you are having any tech issues, please feel free to use the Q&A. We'll do our best to assist you. Today we are doing a 1 hour presentation followed by a Q&A session. And finally, at the end of the event, there will be a survey available. So please take the time to give your feedback if you can. Um, I want to introduce the partners on this project. So this is a project by the Canadian Women's Foundation, and the project was funded by the Tree of Life Foundation. The research phase of this project was done by Taylor Newberry Consulting, and the online course that we are presenting to you today was designed by New Room and Pure and Applied. And I would like to invite Erin Willett from New Room and Roxane Desforges from Pure and Apply to introduce yourself. So please tell us a little bit about you.
Would you like me to go first? Hi, everyone. Really happy to be here. My name is Erin Willett. I use she, her pronouns. I'm one of the co-founders of New Room. New Room supports people and organizations that are actively engaging in social and organizational transformation. We do this through anti-racist, anti-oppressive training that focuses on creating environments of belonging. Within the context of this project, myself and my business partner were really thinking about bringing that anti-racist, anti-oppressive lens to the curriculum development that we did with Pure and Applied. We were thinking a lot about the learning experience and the engagement with the grantees who were a really central part of designing the course that we designed. Um, I don't know, little tidbits about me. I love to karaoke. I've been an artist my whole life. I grew up in the subarctic in a very isolated, beautiful Innu and Naskapi territory, town called Shefferville. And I'm just really glad to be here. This project was extremely enriching. I'll pass it off to Roxanne.
Hi, everyone. I'm Roxane Desforges. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm located in Gagnac-Guéha, Montreal. I'm a former teacher who moved into ed tech and Indigenous education before making my way to the work I do today in instructional design and educational strategy. In 2017, I co-founded Pure and Applied to help organizations really deliver on their educational missions, ambitious educational missions. So in my day-to-day, I develop e-learning courses and platforms that reach regional and national audiences. We also help teams use e-learning to build internal capacity so they can deliver programs and services more efficiently while reserving human time for the moments that matter most. And we're seeing that there is a really huge need for that today. Since 2017, we've worked with over 50 different organizations across sectors like education, healthcare, mental health, workforce development, Indigenous rights, gender equity, and more recently, affordable housing. So it's been such an enriching journey that has brought me to this moment here today, and I feel so present with you all, and I'm really proud to be here to launch this course with you.
Thank you so much, Rox and Erin. It's a pleasure to be with you today, and I'm super happy to be able to finally talk about this project that we have been working on for a while now. So I want to give everyone an overview of this project. So like I mentioned before, this project was funded by the Tree of Life Foundation. And our goal with this funding was to create a tool that could be useful for our Girls Fund grantees. So what is the Girls Fund? So for 20 years now, the foundation's by the Girls Fund supports programs for girls and non-binary youth aged 9 to 13. And these programs are very different from one another. Some are doing science, some are doing sports, art, workshops on leadership, or Indigenous teaching. So they are very different from one another, but they have all in common to have the goal to give participants tools to develop their self-esteem, learn about themselves, and gain new skills in a safe space, and also in girls only or girls and non-binary youth only space. You need to know that the Girls Fund is working on a 4-year cycle. So we have cohorts during four years that are this. Every organization is the same for the 4 years, and we are doing a community of practice. So it was during the community of practice that we were able to talk with grantees and see like what were their needs, what they needed support with, what was the more important for them. And the youth workers have identified mental health as a big concern in their work with youth. And especially the COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated issues. And unfortunately, services are not always accessible, especially in rural or remote regions. And I want to add on top of that, the current political climate that is making the world less safe for some youth, especially trans and non-binary youth. Um, so the youth workers have observed that the impact on youth mental health were more severe for some population, especially Indigenous youth, Black and racialized youth, and also trans and non-binary youth. Um, I also want to note that youth workers are not necessarily mental health professionals. Some of them are, but most of them are more like community workers doing like popular education or like programs that are not necessarily based on mental health. Um, and but they wanted to be better equipped to intervene with the needs of youth they were working with. So the goal of this project wasn't to make them mental health professionals. There are other resources to do that. I'm thinking about, for example, the mental health first aid training from the Mental Health Commission of Canada. That is a very great resource. And we obviously didn't want to duplicate that kind of program. And the last thing that I wanted to mention is that these workers mention the importance of community work, working in community. They are working in a group setting. So they wanted to use the power of their community to take action. Um, so, quick overview of the project. I talked a little bit about the Girls Fund grantees needs. We did a research phase first, and then we ended up doing a pilot of the tool that we have developed. And then we are at the final, not the final phase, but like the current phase is the e-course launch that we are doing today. So I want to give you an overview of the research, but before I jump into the research, I wanted to ask a question to Roxanne and Aaron. So what were your first impressions of this project? Because I know like it's very different from the first time we met and we spoke about this project and now what we are presenting to the world today. So what were your impression of this project, and also why did you want to get involved in this project?
You go first this time, Rox.
Okay. Um, I mean, for me, it was immediately just struck me as an exciting opportunity because, as I mentioned earlier, I'm a former teacher. So I understand firsthand how vital the role of youth workers is in young people's lives today. And as someone who hasn't been in the classroom or serving youth directly for a few years, I recognize how important it is to talk to youth workers, talk to folks working on the ground in order to develop the most effective resources to support them and really understand where the best entry points will be. And the Canadian Women's Foundation had insisted on that being the approach. So I felt very aligned with how everyone was wanting to move through the project. As well, the project wanted to focus on skills and building a skill-based model. And in my many, many years of being in education and building e-learning, I've seen that where we focus a little bit too much on knowledge and less on skills, it becomes more challenging to actually get to that point of applying what you've learned in the context of your day-to-day work. And so I also felt like this project would get us to impact sooner. And those are things that I look for in ideal projects, and as well, of course, the opportunity to collaborate with Aaron and Danny at New Room. For me, it was all very serendipitous, and yeah, I'm very grateful.
I feel the same. I feel like it was serendipitous and absolutely have so much gratitude for our capacity to have spent the last year plus on this project and now seeing it ripple outwards and seeing the impact of this course. And actually, so Rox, during the French webinar launch of this last week, I mentioned to Catherine and to Danny that one of the things that really drew me to this, or that I was excited about at the beginning of this project, was that just the serendipitous, synchronous timing of it, because just a few weeks prior to the RFP, landing in our inbox from you, Rox, Danny and I had made a very explicit decision to only work with organizations who we'd be happy to call partners. And so we were really thinking a lot about what partnership would look like within our client engagements and the power of partnership, the power of collaboration, the importance of co-creation as we attempt to build really sustainable strategic approaches to the challenges that we're all facing. So it felt like a real opportunity to practice one of the things that we were really preaching at the time, to collaborate with Pure and Applied, because we can't have built an anti-racist, anti-oppressive course like this without the conceptual theoretical knowledge that we brought, as well as the instructional design knowledge that you brought. We needed to be co-creative with that. And hearing from CWF how intentional the org was in being co-creative, wanting to be co-creative with the organizations they chose to work with the grantees they were choosing to work with. It felt like a really opportunity to work as a collective, um, which always results in stronger outcomes and more impactful and meaningful work. So that was one part that was really exciting. I remember reading through the RFP and getting a really strong sense not only of the feminist values of CWF, but the intersectional feminist values, which are fundamental to building a course like this, which supports equity deserving girls and youth, but through the lens of understanding that those groups are not homogenous monoliths. You can't talk about serving Indigenous girls and just see them as this one group, or Black girls or trans youth. You need to have an intersectional, very curious, very exploratory, very holistic perspective of what it means to serve them. So that felt exciting. And I'll stop there. I feel like I've spoken enough and I'll get more airtime soon. So
Thank you, Rox. Thank you, Aaron, for your answer. So yeah, I want to jump in the presentation of the research, and I want to show you. We will share in the chat the link to the page for on our website of the project. So on this page, you will see on the right side of the screen, there is the link for the e-course, and there's also the link for the research summary and the full research report. So they are all there. So I will talk a little bit about the research, and I also want to point out that this content is also available in French. So to access the French content, you can go up your screen on the right corner. There's français, so you can click on that and you will see the French version, and you will see the e-course, and the research summary is also available in French. So if you want to share it around with francophones colleagues, please do. And so yeah, so I will do my best to summarize as quickly as possible the research, because there's a lot to say, but I also want to have for us to have a lot of time to talk about the pilot and the e-course. But I really invite you to look into the research. The summary is very quick if you want to just see an overview of the research, but also the full report is very interesting. So please look at this. So as I mentioned before, we worked with Taylor Newberry Consulting, and we asked them to do a literature review and also a consultation. So there was interviews and focus group with young people themselves, and also with organization working with youth. Um, and I'm summarizing, but the main questions that for the consultation and the literature review, what challenges do racialized girls and gender diverse youth face accessing mental health services? And also, what is the role of youth serving organizations around mental health? What are the challenges, and and how can we better support mental health youth? So we have a number of conclusions and recommendation in the full report. You will see there's 30 recommendations that are very precise, and of course we used a number of these recommendations to build on the e-course after. But yeah, so without big surprise, of course, the research has shown that racism and transphobia have a negative impact on youth mental health. I feel like I'm stating the obvious, but I feel like, especially in this particular climate, having research to back this up and not to say, like, to show the impact in more details is super important. And it's a way also to show how much an anti-oppressive approach and also working in community is super important for to better the mental health of youth, and not only like having very individual um, solutions. So yeah, so part of the recommendation that was for trans and non-binary youth, it was important for them to have strong support from caregivers, strong uh, social and peer relationships, and access to gender affirming care. Um, it really helps to protect trans and non-binary youth well-being. To protect Black girls' mental health specifically, support staff should encourage them to celebrate their ethnic and racial identity and work with caregiver to promote cultural heritage. Also, trauma-informed programming is key to in improving the mental well-being of racialized girls. It is also essential to provide culturally safe and appropriate mental health programming for Indigenous youth. Organizations need to work with Indigenous elders and with knowledge keepers to foster cultural identity, connectedness, and empower Indigenous youth. In the consultation phase, the youth have revealed their desire to have deeper conversations about mental health. They need safe and inclusive spaces within the community where they can access that they can access as needed, and such spaces are very needed to build community among racialized and gender non-conforming youth. And I wanted to point out also, and Erin, you already said that, like, in this project, we made sure not to put all of these youth and all of these groups in the same bag. We're not saying that these are all the same and that a solution could be found for everybody, not that would work with everybody. There are particularities to each group and also within the each groups. And this is what the research and the online course are insisting. They are insisting on the importance of taking each youth individually for who they are and making sure that the services are right for them. Here, of course, I'm summarizing a very long research report in only a couple of minutes, so I'm doing like kind of generalization, but I really encourage you to look into the research report yourself and see all of the details and and it is shown in the course as well. And the last point that I wanted to share about the research is the importance of targeted programs for caregivers and for surrounding community to raise awareness about racism and transphobia. So
Mm,
service providers really emphasize the importance of not only focusing on young people themselves, but providing education to the whole community. And this is crucial because racism and transphobia are still common issues in Canada. So we need to work on the community and not only like on the work on the youth themselves, with the youth themselves. So yeah, so I really encourage you to look at this, the research summary and the full report. They are there's a lot of examples of best practices for youth work, so it's really interesting. Um, and this phase of the project was very important to respond to the Girls Fund grantees' needs. They really wanted to be better equipped to talk about mental health with youth. The research showed how important it was. So this is where New Room and Pure and Applied joined this project and were able to meet with Girls Fund grantees to develop the pilot first. what will become the e-course after. So yeah, so Erin and Roxanne, can you tell us a little bit about the pilot phase? And after that, of course, I want to invite you to present the e-course, but I really want to for people to have a sense of like what was happening in this pilot phase. And I will,
Very, yes. Sorry, go for it, Catherine.
yeah, I was gonna say I will stop sharing my screen. I think Roxanne, you will share yours. Perfect.
And before you share, Rox, maybe we can just kind of speak to the piloting phase before we jump into the actual e-course. And I just want to mention to everyone watching, this was what Catherine's calling the piloting phase was actually a four-phased or four-part process that took us about 10 months of pretty intensive work. So we're trying to cram all of this very extremely important research and really meaningful work that took us 10 months into an hour-long webinar. So I really invite you to, ask any clarifying questions, dig into the specifics that you want to know more about. Please give us some Q&As. We're happy to answer those after the fact. So first off, the four parts of the piloting phase, we started with a needs assessment, which was a really fundamental foundational part of this work because we needed to understand the Taylor Newberry, did I get that right? Taylor Newberry research that Ketkin was talking about. It's a very dense, um, really important piece of research that was done that was extremely eye-opening for us, gave us a lot of very important data and insights, but also provided us a lot of qualitative pieces of information about youth care providers, about youth, in their own words. So it was a really important piece of research for us that gave us a foundation of understanding for how to move forward. The needs assessment also included extensive conversations with 14 grantee teams. Did I get that number right? It was 14, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So these are organizations who are doing youth care work, youth care providing, who opted into contributing to this project by giving us insights into their lived experience, letting us know where and how they're providing youth care, the implications of that work. So, what is happening for them in their day to day? What are the barriers to actually providing this sort of youth care, mental health focused youth care? And it brought a lot of life to our understanding as far as what these grantees would need from this project, and ultimately allowed us and encouraged us to decide how we would format the course that we ended up building. And initially, we were thinking about it as a program or maybe something that could be facilitated online. Ultimately, what we decided after that needs assessment phase was to expand out the course because there was so much substantial information from the research that we wanted to include, important context, important understandings as far as the historical context when you're doing youth care work to equity deserving youth and girls. But there's also a lot of theory in that as well to understand systems of oppression, understand privilege and power dynamics, understand adult supremacy. So there was a lot of foundational information for us to include in the course before we even got to providing the tools and the practices and the exercises. So as you can get a sense, I'm sure from what I'm saying, there was a lot for us to include. So we moved from that needs assessment phase into making those decisions of what to include in the course. The second phase of work throughout this pilot was called the skill building, drafting the skill building model. And I'm sure Roxanne will speak to this more as she's kind of moving through the course and giving you an overview of that. But this was the phase of the work in which we outlined the curriculum that the learners were going to be moving throughout this course. We laid out all of these modules with a lot of intention and care. We built out all of this content, which you'll see some of in the course in this quick overview that Roxanne's going to give you. And we prepared all of this for a piloting phase which we brought the grantees back into so they could actually test the material and understand the decisions and give us feedback on the decisions that we made based on their original input. Um, what else do I want to say about this piloting phase? There was so much interesting and important information that was shared with us from the grantees as far as what they needed to be able to provide really intentional mental health support to youth. And it goes so much further than just the one-to-one interactions that they're having. They're thinking a lot about the environments and the spaces in which they are providing this care. They are thinking a lot about the supporting relationships that these youth are in. So they're thinking about their relationships with parents. They're thinking about their relationships with caregivers. They're thinking about their relationships with school administrators, for example. They're also thinking about how they can engage meaningfully in community and the role of community in providing holistic mental health care to these youth and girls. So there were so many different layers for us to consider with regards to this course. I've done a lot of talking once again. So, Catherine, Roxanne, is there anything that comes to mind for you with regards to the process and the piloting phase that feels important to name?
There is just one more thing that I would add when it comes to the role of the needs assessment at the beginning. Yes, it is largely to gather a lot of this information that Erin just shared, understanding the needs, the challenges, the gaps of youth workers is critical to building an effective course of any kind, right? Any kind of educational resource should start with a needs assessment. I think most people know that. But what is not always obvious is that um, the reason that you engage directly is so that you can actually form a very personal connection that allows you to decenter yourself.
Mm,
Because as instructional designers or teachers, you can use those terms relatively interchangeably, you have a lot of power over what you're going to create, right? It can be infused with your knowledge, your perspectives, your biases. So if we allow ourselves to make all of the decisions from that point of view, the content and the resources don't wind up speaking really to the intended learner, and therefore they are not useful. And
hmm
we come from a long history, right, of teacher-centered education. And so myself, whenever I think about creating any educational resource, be it a long form e-learning course, micro learning, digital resources, toolkits, whatever it is, my personal fear is kind of reproducing the harms of the past by centering accidentally, because there's goodwill, but these things can happen accidentally. You reproduce those harms of the past. And so taking the time to not just read a report, but really go deeper and form a personal connection and hear the voices of the people that you're serving in your head allows you to do that decentering. And so it's it's just an additional layer that I wanted to share, and one that Erin and Danny and I spent a lot of time sitting with throughout the process.
I'm so glad you named it and you got a couple of emoji hearts. I don't know if you saw those, but someone out there is feeling it too, so thank you for that.
Yay.
Catherine?
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that it showed also because for this project, the piloting phase was like longer than anticipated. And of course, there's a part of like project management where like, of course, we think that we will do things super quickly and we don't. But I'm glad that we got the chance to really um, take the time to work with grantees and work with other people to build this program. And it's not only like, oh, we like, not saying that it's simple, but just like not taking the research report and saying like, okay, let's build a course around that. Like there was a lot of care that was done with the grantees. And one thing that I'm happy, because I know it was a hard decision to end up doing a e-course, um because it's like and of course Roxani will present the course, but like there's this individual self-paced course. Um, and we were like, oh yeah, but we like the community aspect of it when we don't want to lose it. But also, we realized at some point that it's so much more powerful to be able to share this knowledge that we build together with a lot of people. Because, like, if we're doing a like, not a synchronous session with people, like, of course, there's only the people in the room and probably like their community when they will go back to their community and spread the word. But now that we have this course, like, everyone can join and can try this program and build on it and bring it back to their community. So I'm very happy. Like, at first it was a very hard decision, and I know we had a lot of discussion about that, but I'm super glad that we now have this piece of resource that is community based and that we can share with everyone today.
Mm. Agree, I agree. And there's two other things that I want to say before I pass off to you, Rox, which is just with regards to the actual course itself and um, uh, how we decided to structure it. So we had two kind of main pieces of fundamental knowledge that we wanted to impart throughout this course. There was, as I was saying before, kind of the context, the systemic history, understanding the theory and the core language and the kind of the concepts that are at play when you're doing youth mental health care specifically for Black, Indigenous, 2S, LGBTQIA youth. So there's the context and foundational knowledge, and then there were the practices and the skills and the exercises because we didn't want to leave the learners without a toolkit. So we thought about three different layers and types of tools that could be used. We thought about cultural responsiveness, and Roxanne, I know you'll get into this. Cultural responsiveness, we thought about building safer spaces, and then we thought about empowering the youth and tools that would land in each of those sort of spaces. And the other thing that I wanted to mention about this was that just like the girls and youth who are being supported and cared for, just like they are all individuals and they are not part of homogenous groups. The same goes for the people who are offering this youth care. Um, I mean, they're from across Canada. They're from all different types of areas and regions. Some of them are in metropolitan areas. Some of them are in the subarctic and Arctic. They are youth care providers who some of them share identity markers and key identity pieces with the youth they serve, and some of them do not. And so we wanted this course to be something that people could pull from based on who they are, the context that they're in, the work they're doing, the youth who are in front of them. And we wanted it to be, as Catherine said, a resource that would continue to feed them, a resource they could continue to go back to. That's my piece.
Thanks so much, Erin, for sharing. So now, Roxanne, you're sharing your screen to help us. Like, what is it? We're talking about this e-course for a while now. So what's that? What people
Great
can
question,
expect?
Catherine. And for anyone on the other end of the line who wants to follow along, I welcome you to join me. Midhat, you had placed the link in the chat before, but I've just repasted it there in case anybody wants to follow along. But this is the website landing page where Catherine mentioned you could find the full-length research, the summary research, and also the e-course. So I'm going to just go ahead and click through there. And oh, I'm signed in. Um, Forgive me. I did want to show you how to enroll. So you can go ahead and click through there and sign up. And as you know, it's freely available to all of you. So we hope that you do. And I will jump in. Oh, nobody look at my password. Oh no.
It's her first name and one, two,
Always.
three.
Alrighty, so we're now logged in to learn.canadianwomen.org, and here you can see some of the other Canadian Women's Foundation courses, and this is ours right here. So I'm going to go ahead and click through, and here you can see a bit about the course, just like a quick overview of the modules, but we're going to go ahead and resume.
Love to see the
Cool.
emojis. So thank you so much to those of you who are doing that.
Yay. I can't see them, so just so you know, I appreciate it. So here on the left-hand side, you can see the title of the course. You can also see your completion rate bar. So right now, I have not done any of it, but as you do make progress through the course, you get the pure satisfaction of seeing that bar fill up in color, and that's a great feeling. I'm just going to go ahead and close these so we can get an at-a-glance view of the modules. So you can close and open these, but this is your curriculum. This is the four modules that you can move through in a linear, progressive fashion, exactly what most of us are used to. But what we also did was consider the fact that some of you might be starting this course and maybe you had a rough day at work and you want to jump into module 4, self-care is community care, because you need some quick resources or you need to hear something that's going to make you feel better. And you can go ahead and do that. So you're not required to move through it in any way. If you want to jump ahead because there's something that you need access to now to help you, you can do that as well. But here is sort of the overview of the course. Module 1 is very short, so it's really three longer modules. But the first module will walk you through kind of an overview of the course. And as you can see here, the main objectives, or what we're hoping that you'll be able to do by the end of the course, are 4 core things. So the first is, we hope that you'll be able to facilitate youth programming using culturally responsive principles, engage in one-on-one conversations about mental health with youth, whether or not you share the same racial and cultural background. That's something that Erin emphasized earlier, and something that we definitely heard was a real need that we could address immediately. Third is, we hope that you'll be able to empower youth to communicate about their mental health with you, as someone who's going to be, in close proximity to them, but also enable them to communicate with others, we hope. And then finally, something that came through loud and clear, especially in our needs assessment, in our direct conversations, is that youth workers are tired. It's been a rough road. And in order to continue to provide the level of care that we know you want to provide, which is what brought you to the profession in the first place, because you care so much, you also need to be able to take care of yourself before, during, and after youth work, as we see those as kind of critical moments where different resources and different types of supports could come into play. And so that is what we are promising you if you go through this course and go through the activities and apply them in your day-to-day work. As you scroll down, you'll also see that we've included video, we've included graphics. We tried our best to address the topics with the rigor and the seriousness that they require, but also reminding ourselves to take breaks, take light moments, laugh if it's possible, because that's needed as you move through some of these really heavier topics. What I'll also quickly show you is that there are also interactive elements embedded throughout. This is relatively simple, but as you move through, you'll see that you'll be able to engage with the course in more active ways. And Erin, I'd love to pause here in case you want to add anything about the modules or speak to anything that I haven't shared.
Two things that are coming up, not
Yeah.
necessarily about the modules. I feel like I've spoken to those, but thinking about the kind of design aesthetic, and thank you, Olga, for the prompt, and kind of what inspired the visual direction. And the other thing that I'm thinking about is the workbook, putting a pin in that, because obviously we need to talk about,
I'll get there. Yeah.
yeah. So as you can see, there's kind of like a flower and butterfly sort of theme that's going on throughout this course. And early on in our process of thinking about the learning journey and what we were trying to do conceptually and thinking about the youth more through these kind of metaphors. Obviously, the metaphor of the butterfly became a very important one for us. We're thinking about this phase of metamorphosis, the youth specifically that the research touches on, and also that this course is meant to serve our youth between the age of 9 and 13. So these are pivotal transformational years. Um, they're central moments for finding that sense of self and central moments in which youth care providers can really support and influence those phases of transformation. So when we thought about the butterfly, we thought about the process that's going on for the butterfly itself within the cocoon. We thought about the cocoon, and then we thought about where the cocoon lives. And the what's happening within the cocoon is everything that's happening to the youth, to the butterfly. And these metaphors really did inspire the toolkit sections that are laid out in Module 3, because we do have a toolkit that's focused entirely on empowering the youth. So that's everything that's happening inside the cocoon. We're also thinking about the cocoon. So what is the environment and the space that youth care providers are holding and facilitating? So this is about trauma-informed facilitation practices. This is about setting the tone within the environment and the space in which care is being provided, thinking about the space where you're going to be meeting youth and how you can empower them to take a more active role within their own facilitation of the activities that they're doing. And then we're also thinking about, as I mentioned, kind of the place where the cocoon lives, and that's in the garden on these flowers. And from that perspective, we're thinking about the community. We're thinking about recognizing the environment more from a broader perspective, so culturally speaking. And that greatly informed our first toolkit, or our first tool within the third module, which is called cultural responsiveness, which is such a fundamental part of doing this work with humility and curiosity, and celebrating the identity and cultural elements that are fundamental to who these youth are. So from that kind of conceptual understanding, our a lot kind of blossomed. So we were thinking about the aesthetic, but we were also thinking about how we could create a thread throughout this course that allowed you and youth care providers to see themselves as the flowers in these gardens where these cocoons are. What do cocoons do? Cocooning, where these cocoons are cocooning. Um, and we really did want to bring a sense of warmth and joy into some of these modules that are substantial, quite heavy. It was important for us to make this an enjoyable learning experience. So we were thinking a lot about that.
Thanks, Erin.
And I just want to note also, Pam, we do see your question. Um, the CWF team is tracking questions for our Q&A time. Thank you.
So as you move through the course, there are a number of activities that you're going to be invited to complete, and you'll be able to download this editable workbook so that you can actually keep your responses, keep the work that you do, the reflections that you have as you complete the assignments that are more reflection oriented, or the assignments that are more sort of activity oriented and youth work oriented, so that you have those elements downloaded and that you can keep them on your computer or device or wherever you are, so you can access them more readily, even if you are no longer working on the course or completing the course. So we do hope that you make use of that and hold on to it and are able to use it in your day-to-day work. And yeah, there are also fun activities like this, like guided embodiment reflections. And these are the kinds of things that, when Erin speaks to that enjoyment and that ability to take a break through some of the meatier sections, is elements like this that can really allow you to process everything. And here's our beautiful design. Erin, is there anything that you wanted to elaborate on or to jump to? I'd be happy to do that if you want. We have 9 minutes.
I
Do we want to jump to Q&A?
I know that Catherine also had something else that she wanted to talk about after the presentation, but during our French run through of the course, we did take some time to think about or to kind of talk through why Module 4 was so important, that
Mhm.
self-care is community care um, piece. So we end with this module on self-care um, because we want youth care providers to cyclically, continuously return to it. It's fundamental for building a sense of resilience, for caring for yourself so that you can continue doing the work that you're doing. We know the burnout rates are extremely high doing this work, and we need you. The youth need you. The work that you're doing is extremely, extremely important. So, what we wanted to do in the self-care is community care module is to make self-care not just this kind of like theory that's nice and we're like, yes, of course, self-care, bubble bath and all that stuff. We wanted to become a lot more intentional about how you can create self-care practices that are true to you, that are true to your identities, that are true to your culture, that are true to your um, spiritual beliefs. And we wanted to look at self-care really holistically. So we were thinking about it through the physical, the mental, the emotional, the spiritual. We were also thinking about it through the artistic and the creative. And Catherine mentioned during the French webinar that one piece that felt really important for her in this self-care piece was just unpacking the notion of rest and how there can be different ways to create moments of pause and rest for you. Um, what rest can look like even when it's active. So maybe part of your rest practice is looking away from the screen or stepping out of the space that you're always in. And essentially defining, not just throughout this rest module, but throughout all of the self-care module, a practice of care that is really yours to own and is something you can return to.
Thanks so much, Roxanne and Aaron, for your presentation. Uh, I hope that people will want to join the course and try it. And before we go to our Q&A section, and if you want to ask us a question, it's the perfect time to add it to the Q&A box right now. And I'm seeing a question in the chat, and that's exactly the information I wanted to share. So the time that it takes to go through each module. So it's hard to say exactly because there's a lot of reading, and like Aaron mentioned, there's a um like we encourage you to take your time and to like it's not a program that you should like take under like, okay, so I have a Friday that I don't have anything to do. I'm going through. You won't be able to. The approximate time that we have is like 20 to 25 hours. So it's pretty long. So we really encourage you to take the time and maybe like take one module at a time. And I also want to mention, like you showed, Roxanne, you can go like you can jump into section. Like, of course, there's a progression, and like I think it's a good thing. It's a good idea to go like through it like in order, but of course you can jump between the sections. But there's also like each module are separated between different units, so like you can take one at a time. Um, like you don't have to do everything. It's not like, oh, I need to sit down for 5 hours straight. Like you can take like one piece at a time. So and Roxanne is mentioning in the chat that the estimate the estimate time, so 20 to 25 hours, includes the activities, so the workbook. um so yeah, and one last item that I wanted to mention is, I spoke earlier about the fact that like it's an individual course, of course, like you're doing it on your own, but we have heard people who were part of the pilot and people who have tried it, that they tried to do it with colleagues or with friends. So it's a good idea if you want to connect with your colleagues and say like, oh, we want to commit on that. So you can do a calendar, have regular check-in like in your team. If you want to do it with your team at work, I think it would be super great for you to have this community. And maybe in the future we would be able to facilitate that kind of spaces. This is our goal, but right now I can say that like we really encourage you, if you have colleagues that are committed to this learning, you can do it with people and get feedback and get like um, this community space that is maybe lacking in like the own. If you're doing it on your own, I think it's very good if you're doing on your own as well. But yeah, so
Mhm.
that's the last thing I wanted to add. We have very great question in the Q&A. Erin, Roxanne, or do you have anything you want to add before we ask the questions?
I just wanted to piggyback on your piece about how long it will take, and I would even encourage people to take extra time,
Mm,
because this is not a course as you're moving through it where you're going to be quizzed. You're not moving through it quickly in order to just kind of read the concept and understand the concept of, for example, adult supremacy or power dynamics and how that shows up in your relationship with youth. This is a course that's meant to incite a lot of personal reflection and a lot of um, space for you to recognize how these elements that are more contextual, or how these historically significant pieces of information with regards to equity deserving youth, how those actually show up in your work and in the context within which you do your work. So it's meant to incite a lot of deep thinking, and take your time with it. That's essentially what I want to say.
thank you, Erin. So yeah, so I want to invite my colleague Mida Ahmed. If you want to, you thank you so much for monitoring the chat and the Q&A section. So I think we have some interesting questions for us.
Yes, we have a few really good questions. So I'll just ask them in order of how they were asked. So our first question, they said, thank you for the presentation, and they really look forward to the e-course. They noticed that the research focused on Black and Indigenous youth specifically in exploring marginalized identities and anti-oppressive mental health supports. They asked if you could speak to the reasoning behind this focus, and they include that Canada is home to a wide range of racial and cultural communities, including large Asian and mixed race populations. For many mixed race individuals, especially, a lack of clear identity or cultural belonging can significantly impact mental health. So they are just curious as to whether future research might consider including these groups and to reflect the full spectrum of experiences to ensure no one feels left out of the conversation.
Maybe I can start answering, and maybe Erin and Roxanne, you can add after. Of course, like I think our main focus was to make sure that like we didn't think that like one size fits all was working in a mental health setting. So we really wanted to focus on youth that were on the margins. And I know that with our programs, we are working a lot with a with very diverse youth. Um, but we have a focus on Black youth specifically and on Indigenous youth as well. But I want to mention that like we also like the research and the course is also addressing other racialized population. I think that it was maybe a like a standpoint that we wanted to address anti-Black racism upfront and also Indigenous youth, because like I know like we don't like indigenous youth are not to be like um mistaken for like there's some differences between indigenous youth that have experienced colonization and other racialized youth, so that's why we don't put it like all in the same mix. And I think it's super interesting the part you asked about mixed race individuals. I'm pretty sure we don't have anything specifically for that population, but it's super interesting to say to think about that, and maybe in the future thinking about that. And yeah, Erin, Roxanne, do you have anything to add to that question?
Did you want to jump in?
Yeah, there's lots to be said, and I see another question here as well that's connected to it. So, um, multiple pieces that I want to kind of name out loud. First of all, the optics of a situation in which three white women are on the screen talking about an anti-racist, anti-oppressive training program
Mm-hmm.
for youth who are Black and Indigenous, and we're very conscious of that, and we've thought about it a fair amount. My business partner, who is Black, who was involved in evidently the entire course creation, but also the French webinar last week, this was something that we were thinking about a lot. Like, me being here without her, what does this say? What are the optics of this? So first and foremost, I just want to say, with regards to the development of the course itself, the grantees that were selected to be a part of this course were representative of multiple racial and ethnic identities and backgrounds. Were representative as much as possible of a variety of different areas across Canada as well. We were talking about rural, and we were talking about more isolated communities as well. So it was really, really, really important for us that the knowledge that went into the program did not come from us specifically, but that we were the shepherds, or kind of the organizers of the insights that were provided to us. The curriculum was very much designed in co-creation with the youth care providers, so that, as Roxanne was saying, we weren't centering ourselves as teachers, and also we weren't, or instructors, and we weren't centering ourselves specifically through a white lens. So that was very important. I also want to name that with regards to the future work, because this is a foundational program, and it does cover a lot, as we've mentioned a few times, of knowledge, a lot of different groups that we're hoping to serve throughout the youth groups. And CWF's vision for this, and Catherine, maybe you could speak to this as far as how you want to build off on these modules
Mm-hmm.
to provide more specialized and focused, and modules that speak to specific groups specifically. So I know Roxanne also wanted to respond to the question, so maybe Rox first.
Yeah, I just wanted to add from an educational perspective, or a learning perspective. I think we live in a world right now where there is a lot of 101 content. There are a lot of educational resources. In fact, we reviewed some of the existing ARAO resources that already exist in various provinces across the country, in order to ensure that we were not reproducing something that already existed. We wanted to add something new and add something of value. And I think that in an attempt to as well not produce another 101 program, there was the decision to focus in on the research that had been done with certain groups. And I think that these different groups, including multiracial groups, multi-ethnic groups, things like this, do require their own deep dives instead of more 101 content. So I think there is a strategic side of things, and the perspective of having a longer term educational strategy where you do release more resources over time. And I think so far in our conversations, that has been sort of the general sense that we've gotten from Catherine and other folks at the Canadian Women's Foundation. So yeah, I think it's easier to see if we take a step back and sort of look at the whole, that we do hope there will be more resources to come in the future.
Yeah, and I could speak a little bit about that. Thanks, Erin, for the invitation. Um, of course, like these are the 4 module, and our goal at the foundation would be to add on this program, because I think there's a lot that could be done more in depth. And the first phase that I can say that we are currently working on is we got funding from Wage Canada to adapt this program to the northern population, and focusing a lot on Inuit perspectives. So we are working with a couple of my colleagues that are Inuit and are from the north. Um, and we are planning on doing a very exciting community of practice with some people working with youth in the north, and prepare something that will be probably either additional module or like a standalone course. Like we're still like working on the details and being very mindful about what we're doing. But yeah, and it's super important to center, because like I said, like I like from my point of view, and I of course, like my point of view is a former youth worker that is white and is not living in the north. So I I think that the content that we have should be great, and we worked with. There was one of the grantees that was located in Northwest Territories, and a couple of grantees that we worked with on this pilot were Indigenous and working with Indigenous youth. So I think that so I think the content that we have so far is very great, but I think, and like Roxanne mentioned, we really have the motivation to not do one-on-one and do to do 101 and do like the basic information, because I think a lot of great resources are there. So we want to build on and go deeper, because I heard that that's what people are want to do it. And I just want to mention specifically the question that we had um, from a person that was saying that as a Black woman themselves, they are working with youth who have mental health issues, and this person is attending a lot of webinars, and we really want to add like something to the conversation, and not having like another webinar that will give you the 101 and will leave you like not like kind of frustrated maybe, and like not challenge yourself. um so yeah, and the question of this person was addressing the lack of Black representatives in this webinar. So like Erin mentioned, there's Dania Jocelyn Otu, who is your work partner, Erin, and who was part of this project. She wasn't able to be here with us today, but she was with us for the French webinar last week. But yeah, so we take these comments very seriously, and I think and thank you for asking. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's a good thing that you that you called us in for this. So yeah,
Mhm.
thank you.
Definitely want to reiterate the thanks, Lillian and Madeline, for the questions, and um, absolutely want to address them in their completeness and in their complexity. So if you feel like you want additional information, if we can provide more clarity on the specific ways in which we engage with Black communities, in which we engage with the Indigenous representatives within the grantee groups, etc., we'd be happy to follow up by email. I'll drop our company email, which goes directly to myself and Danny Joe in the chat, and happy to engage.
Amazing. I feel like this next question piggybacks a bit off of the conversation that we were just having. So this participant asks, does this e-course include how you could address being culturally responsive if you don't share the same cultural background or understanding as those you might be serving? So I feel like you touched on it a little bit, but like maybe just expanding on how this course could support with that.
Yeah, Erin or Roxanne, do you want to jump in? Because that was one of the objective of the course, like being able to address, like being culturally responsive and also addressing, yeah, like what's the situation when you are sharing identity, but what is the situation with when you are not sharing the identity?
So when I was running through kind of the concepts that were very important for us that inspired the aesthetic of this program, and I talked about the butterfly inside the cocoon and the cocoon inside the garden, and I ended with the garden. But when we were thinking about the tools that were important for someone who's providing care to youth, the number one most important tool for us to consider was that cultural responsiveness. The main takeaway of this entire course, I believe, if we were going to sum it up, as Danny talked about in the French webinar launch of this, was it or is cultural humility and cultural curiosity, and really being extremely open to and inviting of the culture of the youth that you are serving. And we were very conscious from the very beginning of the fact that we were speaking to two learners. We were speaking to learners who might share identity markers and might share the culture of the youth that they're serving. And we also speaking to through those two lenses for everything, but especially and fundamentally for that cultural responsiveness piece to help people to understand actual practices that they could use to, with humility and with curiosity, engage in the community and culture and in from which these youth are. Rox, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I think you summed it up well.
Perfect. So if we want to move on to our final questions, this participant asked, would it be suitable for this course to be used by volunteers in a shelter setting? Our organization works in violence prevention, mainly with women, youth, and children.
Absolutely.
Yes,
I think,
of course.
yeah.
Yeah, and I'm thinking that, like, of course, because if I'm going back to the context of the project, like the main goal was to develop a tool that would be helpful for the Girls Fund grantees. So, like I mentioned at the beginning, the Girls Fund grantees are doing community programming with specifically girls and non-binary youth age 9 to 13. So of course we took this like age range also in question, and that's why we decided to focus on that. But I really think that the content of the course, and also I should say the research, because like if you already did research on that topic, you will see that there's not a lot of things for girls 9 to 13 years old. Like there's not that many. So of course, we try to highlight that, but we looked into like research for you about youth in general, and so I think, yeah, most definitely. And I even think, like, I remember last week I shared the link with one of my friend who is a high school teacher, and I think like it's not necessarily for teachers, but I think that anyone who is working with youth, especially in a group setting, could be super could benefit for that. So yeah, definitely for people in shelters, that could be a super good program to go through.
Amazing. So we have a bit of time left. I think this is like a good wrap up question in case any other last minute questions come in. So how do you hope professionals will use this mini course in their daily practice? And what are your long-term goals for this resource?
Sorry, Midha, I'm just because I'm reading Rosemary's question, and I just want to make sure that we address it before we go to the kind of closing question. So Rosemary, I just want to say, absolutely hear you. It's valid. Appreciate you saying it out loud. And so I don't know if everyone can see the Q&A or if people know what is written in there.
I can read it out. Sorry, I saw something was being typed, so I just
Yeah.
left it alone, but I'm totally happy to read out loud. So this participant just says that they were a bit taken aback looking at the presenters talking about BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color communities, and yet they're all white, and it makes participants, I assume, not feel welcome or represented. So, Erin, you're just about to touch on that, just so
Yeah.
everyone in the call knows.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Rosemary. I think we all appreciate hearing it. And I want to take a moment to just acknowledge that as completely valid and important for us to hear. And I also want to name that it's, again, something that we've considered a lot. This group here of Catherine, Roxanne, and myself are not by any means representative of the team that worked on this, with regards to our specific organizations and also with regards to the grantees, the advisory circle, that was a part of making this course what it is. So I know it can sound a little kind of defensive to say that sort of thing on a call like this because we're just kind of speaking into the void. But I wanted to say that out loud and
Yeah, and
validate your experience of discomfort.
yeah, and thank you for sharing it and because like I think it's super important to name it, and I feel like it made me realize that, oh yeah, no, that's true. We are like the Roxanne, Erin, and I are white, and we are the representative of this project. So yeah, thank you for telling us. And I think because like Erin mentioned, like there was other people that were involved in the project, and we happen to be like the ones presenting today, but it's super important, and I think in the future we will like have maybe a better like thinking about that and about how it made you feel, because yeah, no, it's totally legitimate that you are that you felt like miss I don't want to I don't see I don't I want to say like the exact word, like yeah, not welcome and not represented, because yeah, I can see that, and thank you for sharing, and I think we'll do better in the future for representing this project.
Maybe just because we have a little bit. Oh, we had one more question just pop up. So you were just asked. Oh, okay. So there is vicarious trauma in a big topic in this line of work. Does the e-course have a section addressing this topic?
So I'm doing a lot of the answering here, but please feel free to jump in at any point. A section on vicarious trauma specifically, no, but we are speaking about a variety of different types of trauma from the very beginning of the course itself, because we're talking about the context and the systems at play that create environments or experiences of trauma for the youth that are being cared for. So we're understanding trauma through a contextual lens and through an environment lens, through a historical lens, through a systemic lens. And then when we're moving into the second tool box, which is really about creating safer spaces, facilitation tools, we speak a lot about trauma-informed approaches and how to engage in relationship building and in facilitation that not only addresses trauma, but takes it into account and is responsive to it.
Yeah, thank you, Erin, for sharing. Yeah, I know there's no section around that, but I know there's great resources about that available. I'm thinking about the work of Vicky Reynolds in particular, working on that. So there's always challenge when you're doing this kind of project to make sure that like you're not duplicating things that are already available, and also like covering a lot of things. So yeah, but if you want to learn more about vicarious trauma, I think Vicky Reynolds is a very good resource to go to. And
Perfect. So that might be our last question, and in case anything else pops up. But Erin did drop her email in the chat. So if anybody has questions that come up, like feel free to reach out directly. But Catherine, I will pass it back to you for final comments and a conclusion. And it was very nice seeing everybody. But everyone have a good day.
Thank you,
Th-
Midha.
Thank you, Mida. It was so nice to have you ask the question. Thank you so much. So yeah, this is the end. Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you for your great question. I'm super happy that you were engaged and you shared in the chat and you shared these great questions. Thank you so much. A reminder that we will be uploading this the recording of this session to our YouTube page, and also it will be on the web page that we shared with all of the context of the project, the links to the report and everything. So you can go back if you want, or share with colleagues or with other people, other organization you work with. Um, Thank you so much, Erin and Roxanne, for your presence today. Special, I'm thinking also of Danny Joe, who is not with us today, but thank you, Danny, for all the good work you did. Thank you to Taylor Newberry Consulting for the research part of this project. I want to thank also my colleague, Liz and Mida, who were behind the scenes with us, and thank you for your incredible work. I want to thank all of the organization and youth involved in this project. Your feedback and your expertise were essentials. Thanks also, of course, to the Tree of Life Foundation for their generous support. Um, and yeah, I already said that the recording will be available on YouTube and our website soon. I want to invite you as well to fill out the feedback survey that will pop up on your screen when the webinar is over. We are very happy to get your feedback. And you can also contact me directly if you have any questions or any comments about this webinar or about this project. We really hope that this presentation will encourage you to enroll in this online course. Please share with other people around you. I feel like finally we can share around this fabulous resource that we have been working on. So, yeah, thank you so much and have a nice rest of your day.
Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much. Appreciate you, Catherine. Appreciate the CWF. Rox, appreciate you. Appreciate everyone in the chat. Thank you for the questions. Thank you for the direct prompts. Looking forward to more.
Thank you.